and welcome to the Fintech podcast by Fintech Magazine Africa. I'm your host, Queenette, and today we are diving into a crucial conversation on accelerating financial inclusion, empowering women through digital payment innovation. We are doing this in commemoration of the International Women's Day on March 8th. We would love to dedicate this section to celebrate International Women. And I and my beloved guest today will be diving into this topic. Despite the progress in financial services, millions of women in Nigeria and Africa remain financially excluded. Limited access to banking, digital payment solution, and financial literacy often hold women back from reaching their full economic potential. But technology is changing the game. And today, joining me to discuss is a powerhouse. Someone say powerhouse. Powerhouse of the financial sector. Ngova Ihembe. Sorry, I hope I got that right. Wankwo, she is, when I say powerhouse, I mean powerhouse. She's the executive director of the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, NIBSS. Ngova is a strong advocate for financial inclusion. I'm so honored to be in the same space with her, even though it's digitally. I really respect her inputs, and she is a seasoned leader in Nigeria's financial ecosystem. Someone who is committed deeply in advancing the gender inclusion through digital inclusion. Ngova, it's such an honor to have you here. I am really, really thrilled to be here with you in the same space. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and it's an honor to be here as well. So thank you for the invitation to myself and to Nibs to participate
All
on today's.
right. Thank you very much. Once again, it's a privilege to have you here with us. Financial systems are not just about money. They are about empowering people. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Crystalline Georgia. I think she's one of the managing director for the International Monetary Funds. So hearing these questions, I heard these quotes when I was listening to one of her session a few days ago, and then I kept on thinking. Many people interact with digital banking daily, even without realizing the crucial responsibility that these bodies, such as the NIBSS, plays. For the audience listening and joining us from the various parts of Africa and Nigeria, can you break it down for our listeners? What exactly does the NIBSS do, and why is it such a key? Why are they a key player in the Nigerian financial space?
Okay, hi Queeneth again, and hello to all the viewers. So Nibs is the backbone of Nigeria's payment infrastructure. We enable seamless, secure, and efficient transactions across the entire ecosystem. NIBS drives interoperability, we enhance digital payments, and we support inclusion by providing platforms that enable instant payments. So if you move money from one person to the other using your banking apps, chances are you've done it on one of the NIBS rails. We support and enable mobile banking. And something that we do every day is really supporting innovation, whether it's innovation from a payments perspective, it's collections perspective, or data services. And at NIBS, we like to think that our role is really pivotal in ensuring that there's trust, there's security, and there's efficiency in the ecosystem.
Well,
And we
thank
support payments in Nigeria, but we also work very closely with institutions across Africa to also support and drive their own interoperability.
All right. I think I was too excited, and I'm sure that our audience must be wondering how did this woman get so much knowledge? I mean, look at her speaking with so much confidence. Could you please introduce yourself to the audience so they can know who you are and then move it?
Well, I thought you'd done that already when you introduced me, but my name is Ngove Ihembe Wankwo. I work at NIBS as executive director, and I look after products and business development. I've been in the financial services sector now for over 25 years. Started my career at Citibank, and then I moved to Standard Chartered, where I spent most of my career, and then to Rand Merchant Bank, and finally pivoting into NIBS. Started my career in electronic banking and cash management many
Wow.
years ago, and throughout my career, I sort of moved from that into relationship management, corporate and investment banking, and now I've come full circle back into payments and digital services.
Wow, that's a lot. And in the midst of all of this, I just hear grit, I hear growth, I hear motivation. You inspire a lot of us still out there trying to find our foot and make an impact. Okay, according to the EFIN reports published in 2023, it says that Nigeria only has 35% of women have access to formal financial services compared to the 55% of men. How does this exactly impact women? I mean, imagine a woman running a small tailoring business in a rural community without access to digital payments. She's limited to cash transactions, making it harder for her to save because based on the day-to-day incomes she probably has to feed the family, cater for this, so we know how cash usually quickly flows away. So how is NIMS ensuring that more women like her are financially included?
So the EFINA report that you were referring to, they publish one every year, and we are also quite interested in what the report says, and we look at the data, particularly around the demographics around inclusion. And at NIBS, we recognize that inclusion is not just about access, it's
Excellent.
about meaningful participation, which is some of the things that you're speaking to. And so we've driven things like, so one of the reasons why BVN is so important is that it gives you a digital identity. And over the years, NIBS has really been at the forefront of ensuring that everybody is enrolled in BVN. And historically, you used to be able to get BVN only by walking into bank branches. But it was recognized across the ecosystem that there needed to be an enhancement to that. And so you now have agents who are able to enroll. And what that means for many women who ordinarily would not be able to go in bank branches, that they've got a um, closer point of contact to be able to get the digital identity that allows them to then interact. Now, one of the other things that the BVN does for you is, for us at NIBS, there's a lot of data around payment services. And that data is leveraged by companies, whether it's to provide loans that are non-collateralized, and really to understand the users. And so what we're doing at NIBS is that, in addition to, like I said, driving enrollment on the BVN, we are also working with fintechs and traditional banks to ensure that the solutions that they provide are accessible, they are affordable, and they're user-friendly, particularly for women in rural areas. We also work very closely with the regulator, the CBN, that's doing a lot of work around inclusion. And where we actively work with them to figure out what else can be done, what is the next step. We are fearlessly committed to inclusion every step of the way.
All right, thank you very much. When you said fearlessly, I just remembered what Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala said in one of her interviews of recently. She said, empowering women financially is not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. So why wouldn't you do it fearlessly? Thanks to NIMS for doing it fearlessly and to ensuring that there's a lot of inclusion in this part of the world regarding the gender gap. So we know that financial empowered women reinvest 90% of their income, at least based on research. It said that women reinvest more than our male counterparts, right? So my question is, how is NIMS accelerating action to ensure women are not left out behind in the digital space, in line with the International Women's Day theme, which says let's accelerate action. What strategy? How is NIMS accelerating the action? What strategies are they currently implementing to promote financial inclusion for women?
So you're spot on. A lot of data shows that when women are financially included and their participation is meaningful, it doesn't just benefit the woman and doesn't just benefit the family, it benefits the entire
Exactly.
community in which they operate. And so we recognize that. And what we are doing at NIBS to accelerate action is, like I said earlier, is we're deepening the partnership. So we work with more than 1,000 connecting entities. We ensure that they're all able to connect to each other, but also connecting to NIBS. And so we work with them to deepen our understanding of their own strategies and how they want to work and how we can make life a little easier for them. We are also in partnership with a number of institutions that have a gender lens. So that gender lens means that they're able to provide gender responsive solutions. We're also working to enhance digital literacy because we know that that's one of the areas that has created the gap in inclusion. And we're also advocating for policies that ensure that the products that are out there address the needs of women and are also fair and equitable. We believe that our impact should be sustainable and it should be long term. And one of the key things for us is that we don't just want women to be users, we want them to be active players. And we're doing all we can to support that.
Thank you very, very much. Genderless. This is really, really interesting because 70% of women led businesses in Nigeria operate in the informal sector. So while you were speaking, it just crossed my mind. Oftentimes, most often, they lack access to formal banking services. We all know that Nigeria is one of the countries that the men are leaders, right? And as a result, the women most times have the responsibilities of taking care of the family, the kids. So because of that, most women naturally result in wanting to run an informal business, such as being trading traders and all of that. So I remember speaking to a woman and she was sharing her struggles with her business growth because she couldn't afford loans or digital payment tools. um, how do digital payment system create new economic opportunities for Nigerian women currently? How is NIMS addressing this issue, and what solution are making the most impact currently? Because you while you were speaking, you mentioned the gender lens, you mentioned some other strategies that you guys are currently implementing. But I would like you to speak more about this, especially to our audience who may be out there listening currently and wondering how these initiatives or strategies can directly impact their own lives. So, can you speak to this?
So what we've seen, what our data tells us, and what the everyday business that we do tells us is that digital payments are fantastic. They eliminate geographic barriers, so it makes it easier to reach um, a wider footprint of potential customers for many of the women who run either micro, small, or medium-sized businesses. It also reduces the reliance on cash, and that enhances security because the other thing is it's one thing to have cash and then to spend the cash on things, but there's also the very real risk that when you have cash, it could be stolen, it could be misplaced. So there is a risk that is attached with holding cash.
Yeah.
And so with digital payments, what we find is that entrepreneurs are now able to receive their payments seamlessly, safely, but even more importantly, it helps you to build a financial track record. What we had seen historically was that to access finance, you needed collateral, and many women didn't have that collateral. But what we find is in reality, when women take loans, they actually pay back. Women are excellent people to lend money
It
to.
was, yeah.
But the institution lacked the ability to be able to score. Because to be able to provide a loan, you need to be able to assess your credit
Credit
risk.
score, yeah.
And so when you interact digitally, whether it's you receiving money and paying out, many of the fintechs that we've seen, and even traditional banks now, are able to help you to generate almost a pro forma um, schedule of what your business looks like. So, from a size and scale of your business, they're able to see how much comes in, how much goes out. They're able to create a digital footprint for you. They're able to score you from a credit perspective. And then you're able to build that track record that enables you to then get
Access to
access to
loans,
finance
yeah.
and facilitate your growth.
All right. That's
So my key message to the women who are listening is please interact with digital finance. It's really important.
yeah, yeah. Because I remember during the cash issue few years ago where we did there was an issue in the cash flow in the system. So I remember a particular market woman when I went to buy something somewhere in the rural area in Nigeria, and she was like she doesn't trust digital payment, that I should give her cash. And I'm like, I have this money in my account right now. I want to transfer to you. And she was so firm that she doesn't want it. She's been a victim of fraud, and she doesn't want that. So now my next question would be, what are some key barriers preventing women from fully participating in Nigeria's digital financial ecosystem? And how is the names addressing these challenges? How is names tackling these concerns to build trust
Go ahead.
and to increase the adoption?
So I'd say barriers are things like digital literacy, which we already discussed to some extent on this call. Just an understanding of what it means to interact digitally. What are the options open to you? How safe are platforms? So that's a big barrier. There's also limited access to financial services. Historically, you've had to go into the traditional banks to access services. They may be far, they're only open from one
To
time to one
another,
time,
yeah.
which not necessarily match your other responsibilities. And of course, there are social and cultural constraints. Now, NIBS has tried to address some of these challenges in various ways. So the first one is the digital literacy initiatives. So we work within NIBS to create a lot of knowledge. We do a lot of programs, um, advising players across the industry of the kind of products that we have. We also discuss things like security as well. So it's not just about products, it's about keeping the ecosystem safe. We also work very closely with the CBN that runs a number of inclusion programs and initiatives. And there's a financial literacy week that the CBN organizes every year that we actively participate in. As part of our International Women's Day celebrations as well over the years, we've also focused very heavily on literacy, whether it's for young girls or it's for women already in businesses. And so what we're doing is really trying to increase mobile payment penetration. We're also trying to make sure that we're advocating for policies that are inclusive. And we just keep taking it one day at a time. But like I said earlier, ensuring that we are committed to doing all we can to drive inclusion.
All right. That's really, really nice and that's interesting. My next question would be around the financial system. Melinda Gates said, we can't design financial system for women without including women in the design process. So do you think
Yeah.
financial institutions are doing enough to develop services that caters to women's unique financial behavior and needs? I mean, every woman is more emotional and makes every decision based on their emotions, which includes their finances. So, do you think they are, when designing a financial system, they are considering the women, and how can financial inclusions leverage NIBS platform to develop a more or a gender focused products and services?
So I don't think that women are any more emotional than men. I think that that's a fallacy. Um, I don't think that's correct. We may show it more, but I don't think that we are any more emotional than men are. I also think, and I told you earlier, that the data actually shows that when women take loans, we pay back our
Yeah.
loans. We're excellent people to lend to. And I'll stop there. I won't say too much more because it's not a gender war. We want both everyone to interact, both men and women. And you're right, we need more women at the table. We need more women as heads of businesses. We need more women in fintech roles. We need more women in STEM. So that as the products themselves are being developed, um, we have people at the table who say, look, have you thought about this? This is what I see. That's why diversity and inclusion is very important. At NIBS, we have access to data. And when we work with whether it's traditional banks or it's fintechs, we're able to share our own insights into what can be done differently, what's missing, where do we see a gap, what can you do differently. And we work with a lot of institutions, like I say, we help them with their strategy, we help them to design products, we co-create products, and we are seeing increasingly that, because lending to women, it's not about being altruistic. It's good business, and we see lots of institutions actually driving that actively because they see that it's good business. It's not about them just giving back, it's about them also growing value for their own shareholders. And so we work with them to create that value by providing access to as many of our platforms as products as they need. And what we see so far is they continue to do it because they're seeing the returns on their business.
All right. Okay. 50% of Nigerian women own a mobile phone, but only 16% use mobile banking services. So there is clearly a gap between
Yeah.
mobile phone ownership and digital financial usage. What role is technology playing in closing this gap? What role does technology play in accelerating financial inclusion for women, particularly in rural or unserved areas?
So, I mean, the first thing is that the data is actively tracked. So, you reference the FINA report, and I can tell you that everybody across the ecosystem looks at that data, and actively seeks to ensure that the needle is moving in the right direction and increasing inclusion. Um, in terms of so again, I think it's really around understanding what is hindering participation. And we talked about it earlier that the first thing that we see is literacy. So, how can we get more people to understand and to interact? The second thing is what's in it for them? When they come into the ecosystem, what benefit do they derive? And so that's why we try to ensure that the services that we provide are provided on a scale to the extent that they're cheaper alternatives. So cash has been king for so long. Traditional payment models over the years, where that you would need to have a POS machine, for example, Many micro businesses cannot afford that. So one of the things that NIPS has done is we've launched QR payment, so you can pay using a
QR
QR
code.
code. Doesn't require expensive hardware. It's also relatively cheaper than if you were to use the other methods of payment. And we've been actively driving that method over the last 2 years. This year, it's a big focus area for us. We're doing market storms. We're working with various fintechs. So you hear a lot more about that. And I think that that is a tangible way that we're ensuring that women in small businesses can digitize their collections process without it costing them too much.
All right. That's beautiful to know. I mean, payment through QR code. That's really really nice. So I recently read about women farmers in the northern part of Nigeria are using digital wallets to receive payments for their crops without needing a physical bank. I think that was Momo. I'm not sure, but I remember that I read something about that article. So my question now is: are there other success stories that stand out? So in case one of our audiences is listening and is like, oh, these things they easier said than done. Let's can you bring it home? Like, oh, we actually did this. These are the for the QR code payments. These are people that are currently using these initiatives. These are the beneficiaries that we have. These are some posts or articles that we have published. So, can you provide examples of initiative payment solution that have positively impacted women-led businesses in Nigeria?
So we've spoken already about QR codes, and it's been around for about 2.5 years, and we have more than 5 million merchants,
Wow.
of which a good proportion are women. We also launched the Afrigo card, which you might have seen press around. We're working closely with NIMSI so that we can generate a payment and identity card that allows you to receive and make payments. So that's another very tangible way. We work with a number of fintechs, and quite a number of the fintechs that we work with are providing mobile wallet solutions in underserved areas. Some of the fintechs that we work with are predominantly focused on those areas because that was the mandate that they had to drive inclusion. So they're not necessarily focused only in the cities, they've gone into the rural areas. The Afrigo card, for example, we are pioneering an offline card, which will mean that you don't necessarily need to have data connectivity to be able to pay with your card. And that is because we recognize that there are areas of the country that perhaps don't have as good data network as others. So these are some of the tangible examples. We continue to work, and if there are any sort of fintechs that are looking at developing new products, we're very happy to co-create and work with them.
All right. While you were speaking, um, actually, I was going to ask on the on how NIBS collaborates with financial fintech fintech services providers and all of that and banks as well. So, but I like the fact that you delved into that a little bit. But I would like you to shed more light on um how NIMS is working with the fintechs and banks. Like, how can this collaboration be done? For instance, if there is a founder listening currently and is in the fintech space and is wondering, am I actually benefiting from this, or how can I earn more, or how can this interaction profit my organization, and how do I go about it? So how is NIMS collaborating with fintechs and other stakeholders to drive inclusive digital payment solution?
So one of the founding beliefs that we have at NIBS is that collaboration is key. That's really why we were set up. We're set up to ensure that the ecosystem was able to collaborate with each other. And so we're the backbone of that through interoperability. We provide infrastructure and we provide the platforms so that fintechs are able to run their businesses. But what we also do that I think is quite novel and is exciting is that we do something called our demo days. So we get fintechs to work with us on various initiatives. So we've done a direct debit demo day, we've done a QR demo day, where we work with them and say, look, what can you develop around this particular solution? Consume it and then build your own product. And then we as NIBS will give you a platform to talk to the industry, to showcase what you've built and the value that you bring. So that brings you additional views, interests, and then we can, drive how well your product does and how well it reaches the last mile. Looks like we've lost the host, but we'll wait and see.
Sorry, everybody. We just have a little technical glitch. She's going to join us in a little while. Um,
Not
I
a
think
problem.
I'll pick up from where she stopped. Um,
Hmm.
that we're talking about collaborations between NIPS and FinTech. But I like us to talk. I, I like us to talk about security. With the increase in cyber fraud, what are the measures NIPS is taking to prevent women from being attacked or being victims of cyber fraud?
So I think the incidences affect both men and women, doesn't discriminate in terms of gender. And what the data actually tells us is not that there's an increase in fraud per se. It's just that the magnitude and the impact that the fraud has um, is bigger, because now we've moved away from sort of being able to take cash, which would have been big, heavy, you'd have needed a van to cut away, to it being done digitally. And it's not a peculiar situation with Nigeria. We see it across the world. With technology advancing the way it has advanced, uh, we see that people are now able to perfect interesting ways to either scam people or penetrate various defenses that institutions have put up. So at NIBS, there are a number of things that we're doing. The first thing obviously is ensuring that ourselves at NIBS, where our platforms are safe and secure. And we are investing heavily in ensuring that we use up-to-date technology and our platforms are secure. We continue to be very watchful to ensure that we don't drop our guard. We also are ensuring that across the ecosystem, in the ways that they connect with us, it's also a safe and secure manner. We share information across the ecosystem, information around what we're seeing in terms of fraud trends and ways that institutions can protect themselves. We also share information around bad actors. So, who are the fraudsters, and what can we do within the remit of the guidelines and regulations around BVN, whether it's watch listing or blacklisting BVNs to keep them out of the system. And then, the other thing that we do is NIBS has the industry fraud desk sits inside NIBS, and we have a tool called Hawk that sits on top of our platform. And Hawk is able to monitor transactions that are happening and flag suspicious transactions. And institutions are able to then get that information and act on it. So those are some of the things that NIBS continues to do.
All right, interesting. Thank you so much for that. And sorry about the technical issues.
It happens.
Thank you for understanding. All right. I My next question would be: are there mentorship or capacity building programs that NIMS is involved in to support youth, women in the finance and technology areas? Many young women want to build careers in fintech and the digital banking, but they don't know where to start from. So, what opportunities exist for them through NIMS?
So there are a number of industry-wide initiatives. There's the Fintech Association of Nigeria, and it runs quite a number of initiatives. There's an amazing Fintech Week that it runs every single year, which I would encourage every woman who is thinking of coming to the sector or is already in the sector to ensure that they attend
You
and they're
attend?
visible and they have meaningful
Sure.
conversations, please. Um, and then we also at NIBS are always available to mentor. Like I said,
Sorry.
one of the things that we strongly believe in is collaboration and co-creation. So we actively work. We also have seen a number of, female-owned businesses gain licenses, whether microfinance banks or fintechs. And we're always very excited to see them come on board. We ensure that they're able to connect into our platforms, and we're able to provide the services and platforms that we already have to them.
All right. Just before the technical glitch, you mentioned, and it's very obvious that you are data driven. You track the datas and you know your numbers. So my question is, how does NIBS track the impact of its initiative? I know you keep mentioning references to the numbers and this report. So how do they do it? Like, measuring this progress is just as important as making the progress itself, right? So how did you do it over the last through over this period that you've been with NIMS? How is it done? Can you give us more light on that?
So we analyze transaction trends. So we get data by the second, by the millisecond, because every payment, the payments on our instant payment platform literally happen in milliseconds, not even seconds. So we analyze that data. We've got a team that does it, and we're able to get reports around it. We're also able to track things like digital identity adoption rates, because we can see the demographic data that tells us, who is enrolling, where are they situated, what demographic, what gender are they, what age bracket are they. So we can get all that data, and we do get that data. And then more importantly, we get feedback. We get feedback from the financial services providers that enables us to measure our progress. We know when we're doing well. We know when we need to tweak things here and there. We know where things, where perhaps people have had challenges connecting. We take it back and we refine. And it helps us to refine our strategy, refine our platforms. We're always rebuilding and refining what we put out into the market.
Right, that's good to know, and it's really, really amazing and interesting. The future of finance is digital, and the future of digital is inclusive. So, looking ahead, what are NIM's NIMS key measures to accelerate financial inclusion for women in Nigeria. I know you speak to this a little earlier, but I can see that we have more numbers in terms of our audience. So could you just reiterate what are the key things we have been doing in NIMS?
Okay, so there are three key things as we see them. The first one is enhancing digital literacy, because people, both men and women, but more importantly women who are disproportionately excluded, need to understand more what is available to them. So that for us is critical, is key. The second thing is, how can we improve access to credit for female entrepreneurs? And to do that, it's about ensuring that the platforms that we provide, the fintechs and institutions that then provide that lending, enable them to make the right decisions. And then the third thing that we do is strengthening our partnerships. I've spoken a lot around how collaboration for us is really the backbone of everything that we do. So it's about strengthening those
Mm-hmm.
partnerships, um, and ensuring that there is a gender responsiveness to the solutions that are put out there. And I think those three things are underpinned by a very good relationship with the regulator, so that we're in step with their own focus areas and the gaps that they see in the market. And then the other thing that underpins it for us is ensuring that we listen, we get feedback from the market, from players, to see where things need to be tweaked here and there.
Wow, wow, wow. Having this conversation with you today just keeps reminding me of what my grandma always says. She likes saying in our local dialect that if you empower a woman, you empower a nation. So what's one action step banks, fintech, and policies makers should take immediately to support women's financial inclusion in Nigeria?
Oh gosh, one.
You can you can cover
Um,
that one. I just so that's the way I could phrase the question. But what advice would you give to the financial institutions and policymakers generally? You could speak to more than one. We have enough time.
so I think you have to have a gender lens. It's critical. In fact, I think so. I mean, obviously, gender equity is something that's very dear to my heart. But I also think that diversity is very critical. Whether it's women, whether it's youth, you've got to have a lens that says that not everybody is the same. And as you design your products, as you look at people who use your products, you've got to always have that back of your mind. What are the demographics? What can I do differently? What is peculiar? So I talked earlier about BVN enrollment, and we still see it in certain communities where if you expect the women to come out to come and get enrolled, then you're already excluding them because they won't. So when you know that, it's then how do I design a process or a product that makes it easier for women to actively participate? Okay. And then the other thing is to leverage data to create inclusive solutions. That kind of dovetails from the first thing I said. We have a lot of data, whether it's NIBS, whether it's companies, whether it's across the nation. Do we look at that data and do we ask ourselves interesting questions like, what does the data tell us? What's missing in this data? Who is not here? And why? And then we have to prioritize partnerships. Collaboration I think, is the bedrock of any sustainable society. It's great to compete, but it's even better to collaborate. I think the market is wide
Exactly.
and it's deep. So there is no reason not to collaborate because everybody will get a share of the pie. But if you look at partnerships, we've seen in sort of countries like India, one of the ways that they've really been able to, in a short space of time, close the inclusion gap has been because there's been a very strong a partnership between the regulator, between the switch, within the fintechs and within the financial institutions. They all work together because there'll always be gaps and you need people to fill in the various gaps. So I think for me, if I had to say the one thing, it would be please, please, please collaborate with the regulator. People always look a little bit askew when I say collaborate with the regulator because that's what regulators are there for. They're not just there to wrap us out across the knuckles. They see things from an interesting perspective. We have to be able to go to them, to talk to them, to share our experiences, to understand their own priorities and build that into whatever products and services that we are providing.
Yeah, collaboration is really, really important, and it's something that we are currently lacking in Nigeria. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. So, for the women listening to this and might
Mhm.
feel digital finance is not for them, what's your message to them um, as we try to call it a wrap?
Digital finance is very much important to everyone, but to I think women in particular. Women are often time poor. So we're doing a number of things on the go. We cannot therefore rely on brick and mortar. We need digital because it allows us to do things that in our own convenience. So I think that's critical. The second thing is that a digital footprint across financial services allows you to build a good track record of your business, where perhaps you may not have other forms of collateral or other ways that give comfort to lenders. So it's important that you're able to say, this is how much I've done over the last 6 months, over 1 month, this is my typical turnover, this is the size of my business. And it's a lot easier to do that when you interact digitally. I think the other thing that digital finance does is that it expands your market. So whereas you may have only been able to sell within a small radius, if you were doing it physically, as we saw when we had the pandemic and we all stayed at home, it expanded people's markets. You've got people in Nigeria who are selling actively across Africa and across the world. And that's only been possible because there's been that expansion of access to your market and who can pay you in ways that they might not have been able to do before if it was only cash. Now they can do transfers, they can do QRs, they can use cards. So I think that it's not an option. You have to interact.
All right, all right. Thank you very much, very, very much for that. I think you answered one of the questions we had regarding collaborations or strategies in place by names to allow payment across Africa. You already answered that. We have another question, and I think this personally for you. She says, "What is your favorite motivational quote?"
Oh gosh, there's so many. It's hard to pick one.
Okay, give
But
us
I
the top
think the one
three
that resonates
because I'm also
I think the
interested.
one the one that resonates most with me is the one that says, if you want to go
Wow.
uh, far, you know, you need to go with people. And I think I'm paraphrasing it, but essentially, we tend to think that if I'm going to reach my destination, I need to go on my own and go as fast as I can. But really, the more you have people, it takes a tribe, and it really does take a tribe to really make that destination a reality. So that would be my favorite quote.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ngova. It's been an awesome section. This has been an incredible and insightful conversation. We've explored how digital banking are unlocking new opportunities for women and the challenges that remain and the solution that can drive real change. Thank you so, so much for your expertise and your passion. We appreciate what you're doing in the fintech, in the financial industry in Nigeria, in Africa at large, and I personally am looking up to you, and I'll keep reaching out and keep learning more from you. Thank you for tuning in. Um, if you found this, so this is for the audience. Thank you very much, Ngova. All right. In
Thank you. My
collaboration,
pleasure.
in
Oh,
collaboration,
we forgot the most important
exactly.
thing we're supposed to do today.
In collaboration,
Yeah.
um, um, in commemoration of the International Women's Day, let's do the sign accelerating financial inclusion. Let's do it together.
To accelerate
Accelerate
action.
action. Let's do it together. All right. Thank you so so much, and to our amazing audience. I mean, this podcast will be nothing without you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you very much. We celebrate you especially. If you found this conversation valuable, interesting, feel free to subscribe to Fintech Podcast, and you can turn on your notification for other live sections and insightful sections such as this. This podcast is proudly sponsored by the Fintech Magazine Africa. For more discussion on the future of financial technology in Africa and in the globe, see you next time. I remain your host, Queenette. Keep innovating and empowering yourselves.